Welcome back to the LIGNA stage. I'm also pleased to welcome you here on the last day of the LIGNA stage. We'll now have a panel discussion about wood, dust and long-term health effects. Wood, dust and long-term health effects, monitor and improve air quality during woodworking. I'd like to give a welcome to Dennis Vogtmann, Sjord Gersonius and Göktas. Enjoy the panel. It will be in German. If you need interpretation into English, feel free to go and get yourself a headset. Thank you very much. Hello, welcome to our discussion. We'll be speaking about wood dust and long-term health effects. I'd like to begin by saying thank you very much to LIGNA for putting so much effort into organising this. We would like to raise awareness in the wood industry about this topic. Today we will speak about wood dust thresholds, so dust thresholds outdoors and indoors, because there are significant differences between the two. We'd like to tell you why this is the case and action that can be taken. The impact of stale food or water are known, but when it comes to dust, this isn't the case. You only find out what the impacts are later on, and it can have terrible effects. We have two experts who we've invited today. One of them is Mr. Gersonius from the Netherlands, who's an expert for the quality of interior air, and Mr. Vogtmann. Mr. Vogtmann is a safety engineer and has lots of practical experience. I would now like to go over to the gentleman and begin by speaking to Mr. Vogtmann and ask why there's such a significant difference between the air quality indoors and air quality outdoors. That's a very good question. Thank you very much for asking me it. It's also a very important question. Bear in mind, 480 million alveoles are in our lungs, and if you breathe out, then you reach an area of 120 square meters, which is the entire carpet which you can see out here. This is what you can fill with one of your lungs, which means that our lung has direct contact to the broader world and covers a very large surface. The WHO has issued thresholds and said that the limit for dust outside should be 50 micrograms per cubic meter, and that it shouldn't go beyond this. In Germany, we've got the TGS value, which prescribes an interior threshold during work of across the period of 8 hours of 2,000 micrograms, which means that we've got the WHO, which has clearly stated what the risk is of dust, but said that outside it shouldn't be over 50 micrograms. The German regulations allow 2,000 grams in the indoors, and this is quite questionable because here we have staff who spend several hours every day indoors and are thus exposed to the risk of dust. We've also got the long-term health effects. So the two connected to one another. Mr. Gersonius, could you tell us a bit about this? I'd just like to respond to what Mr. Vogtmann said about the WHO figures. What I find surprising is that worldwide 6.7 million people die prematurely due to the long-term health effects of dust outdoors, due to respiratory illnesses, lung cancer, heart attacks. Every year 6.7 million people die prematurely, and the COVID pandemic, it was terrible. It was something different, but this was a one-off event. But over the last 50 years, 6 million people, which is why I don't understand that indoors we don't pay much attention to this. This is indeed a problem. Because for air quality, with air quality, when it comes to air quality, a lot of people don't realise how high the contamination is and don't react. We know that studies have been conducted which state that the air quality, or the studies which have already been conducted, are not good. which means there are studies which have proven that currently the threshold is much too high. But you can tell us a little bit about the long-term health consequences of dust and particulate matter. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. If you have a look at wood-based dust, it's quite interesting. It started in around 1960 in the UK. Ear, nose and throat doctor found that 17 patients who had a type of nose cancer, of 17 people, 15 had worked in the wood industry, which means back then, for the first time, a clear link was found between nose cancer and dust. So later on, one of the leading institutions globally for cancer research had a look at this topic. It was the International Agency for Research on Cancer. They conducted an independent study. They looked at the impact of wood dust on people, and separately, they also looked at aldehyde and its impact on people. We don't have too much time, which I'd like to simply go move straight to the results of the study. The finding of the study was that wood dust is carcinogenic for people, category 1, which means it's clearly carcinogenic effects on humans. Formaldehyde was in category 2, which means that it's highly likely to be carcinogenic for people. It's important to remember this, because the experts in the field of cancer research have classified wood dust as being carcinogenic. In 1985, B.G. Holtz, Wood Association, conducted a study on wood dust. Surprisingly, they found in their study that it's the hardwood dust which is carcinogenic. So they did manage to classify it more narrowly. But this isn't the end of it. Those of you who are familiar with the occupational health list will know that nose cancer caused by wood dust is only recognized if you've been exposed to beech wood. Okay, so it means that there has been restricted to specific types of wood, so to oak and to beech. Now, of course, research is continually updated, but not that long after it, there was some criticism in specialist publications about this. It was found that there was a clear error in the methodology of the study, and that the results of the study were not admissible in their form. They explained why. In the study conducted by B.G. Wood, people were studied whose illness occurred between 1964 and 84, and we know from medical history that it has a latency period of around 40 years, an incubation time of 40 years, which means the studies which form the basis for the thresholds we have today examined people who suffered their illnesses between 1964 to 1984. So it means that we're speaking about a time frame in which we had completely different working conditions to what we have now. It was a completely different world of work at that point in time. These people the exposure to the wood form the basis for the regulations we currently have today. Now, this doesn't really serve the purpose that we're looking at. This is quite clear. There was another point of criticism levelled at the study. Before you carry out a study, you need to consider from which point in time you classify wood dust. Because is it a cloud of dust? It's never 100% just one type of dust. You've got different types of dust in this cloud. But you need to consider from which point do you deem this wood to be, for example, a hardwood dust. B.G. Holtz decided that anything had a component of above 50% of hardwood would be considered hardwood dust. But you could assume this would be the same for softwoods, but no, for softwood, they said it would be over 95%, which means that only in this study, you're only able to speak about softwood exposure if you have a dust cloud which contains more than 95% softwood. But you need to be able to prove this, of course, before you can draw a conclusion. Yes, correct, because theoretically, the softwood was basically eliminated from the equation, so we were not able to examine the effects of softwood because it was ruled out given its categorization. This point of criticism was known at that point in time, and as you quite correctly said, in March 2003 there was an additional study which was conducted and published in the Health Journal, and it only focused on the BG Holz study, and also found that the restricting it to hardwoods as being carcinogenic was not admissible. Instead, the Luxembourg, German and Austrian authorities, for them it was recommended that they adjust the threshold and that wood dust in general, comprising both types of wood, be deemed to be carcinogenic. And 20 years later, this has yet to happen. So you still have the problem when you work with softwood that it's not going to be recognized as an occupational health hazard. You spoke about nose cancer, that's what you mentioned, but there is another important organ, our lung, of course, which is continually exposed and also stores dust. So there are a number of other diseases which can originate in your lung, probably more so than from your nose. Perhaps you could give us an opinion on this, because lungs were also affected by COVID-19. The question of what a lung is able to do. 30 to 40% of your lung capacity, if you lose this, then you can't breathe easily anymore, you can no longer exercise, you can no longer work for a full day. Of course, a large number of people noticed this. They got COVID, and after having COVID, they had a reduced lung capacity, and they had to go to work as normal. There were still a large number of people who haven't regained their full lung capacity. Now, if the bronchi in your lungs are broken down, then they don't work anymore. And it's the same with wood dust and particulate matter. These very fine particles, they penetrate your lung to such a degree that they block your bronchioles, and your body is no longer able to clear them, which means that if every single year you lose half a percentage point of your lung capacity for 20 years, then it means by the time you retire, you won't be able to absorb enough oxygen to breathe properly enough to enjoy a enjoyable life. So it's been proven that it is poisonous, wood dust. You automatically, over the long term, if you breathe in wood dust, you are likely to get certain types of cancer. Studies have been conducted which prove this. But a large number of companies are taking action, but not all of them and not enough of them. In order to save energy, a number of buildings are built very densely, and this has an impact on the air quality in the interior, inside buildings as well, because the air exchange rate for a building is not filtered as much as it should be. Now, in the past, for every employee, you used to have a certain degree of ventilation that needed to be provided. But there were some buildings which weren't well sealed, which weren't well insulated, which meant that you had greater air exchange between the interior and exterior air. But in the modern buildings, they're built airtight, and new companies, for example, with they use exactly the same types of machine, the same spot suction, that you have more problems, that you have higher dust load in the production facilities. A last question for you two. What can we do to rectify this? What are the first steps you need to take, in addition to an awareness of the problem? Well, exactly this. An awareness, this is the most important thing. I've been walking around the trade fair over the past few days, and I've spoken to a number of different people. There are simply people who say, yeah, we don't have particulate matter, we've got wood dust. But the thing is, what we need to do is accept that wood dust is also particulate matter, and as Mr. Vogtmann said, it comes in different sizes. It can be so small that it can deeply penetrate your lung, a size that gets stuck in your nose, and then some which is so big that it just lands on the ground. I think this is the first point. Yeah, absolutely correct. And we don't need to assume the worst case scenario. Let's leave cancer on the back burner for a minute, but wood dust on its own, the studies are conclusive, is extremely carcinogenic when it comes to your nose. This has been proven. The study is conclusive on this. But what you said about the lungs, when it comes to lung cancer, there are lots of studies that have been conducted which have tried to deliver evidence. Thus far, no clear evidence has been provided. There are studies which have succeeded, others have not. And those that did succeed had very even results. So it means that there's still a lack of certainty as to whether you can draw a final conclusion on whether wood dust constitutes a significant risk for cancer, for lung cancer. But there is no dust which is healthy for humans. It doesn't exist. High dust concentration is always dangerous for people, and as you quite rightly explained, dusts, the smaller they are, the deeper they penetrate your body, and often they transport chemicals which then get into the human body, which can cause other illnesses. For this reason, it's very important, first and foremost, for a company to know what type of dust you have in your production facility. Just like a doctor, he examines a patient before he actually makes any intervention and initiates a course of treatment. To begin with, a company has to know what the dust concentration is, what type of dust you have, in what concentration. So there's no way around performing professional measurements and doing this at regular intervals, let's say annually, twice a year, to be 100% certain, because we're speaking about a topic which doesn't really seem to have established an understanding of the importance, doesn't seem to be widely accepted. Now, wood dust is particularly dangerous for humans. So what this means, it's been proven, is that a lot of allergies can develop as a result of inhaling wood dust. There were some studies which showed that you had a 27-fold increase in the risk of suffering from nose cancer through inhalation. So it's very important for a company to begin by having an open mind and not just acting as if this problem didn't exist. There are a lot of companies who think that you can use filter or suction or vacuum extraction, and that's the first step, but it's not correct, is this? No. There were three different measures. Firstly, you have to take measures at source. So house encasement or spot extraction. There is a second measure, and this is looking at how air quality using qualitative measures can be improved in interiors, so with ventilation, for example, air recirculation, and the final measure is personal safety equipment, personal protective equipment, which is used very frequently. But this is actually well, a lot of people don't like wearing masks as well. You can't expect an employee to spend the entire day wearing a mask. Yes, this is another reason why the qualitative measures are more important. We know that people cannot work comfortably if they are wearing a face mask all day. We also know, just to add something, that simple spot extraction, vacuum extraction of the dust, does not 100% remove the dust. This is certainly required as an initial measure, but it's not sufficient. You still get enough dust in a production hall which decomposes or which is deposited or goes through the hall. So it means that the employees are permanently inhaling the dust. This is why it's very important to perform a test, to take a measurement, and ensure that in addition to the spot extraction, you have other technical measures in place. As we've just heard, personal protective equipment is always the last link in the chain. The most important thing is having these technical organization solutions in order to reduce the risk for your employees. I understand a number of companies, for example, that first and foremost, it's something you're reluctant to do because you have to spend a lot of money. But one thing I can assure you of is that occupational safety and the safety from protection from wood dust is not just an expense, but it pays off in the end because a sick employee also costs the company money. It costs them a lot more than a one-off investment in a technical solution, which means that from an economic perspective, it does make sense. Furthermore, I find it quite surprising, the level of acceptance, because we understand how important security is and safety is. If I were to ask people here in the audience, I'm sure we would arrive at a common denominator that you would like to be protected. Some people go cycling on the weekend. A lot of people like to play football on a weekend, and we ensure that when we do this, that we remain safe. But we ensure that the risks do not cause us, for example, to be playing football for the last time or having an accident. We check the tyre pressure. We look to see what the route's going to be. We put a cycling helmet on. And if all of a sudden we transfer this to the world of work, then it's as if people think that there are two types of health. The first is health in your leisure time, and then your health when you're at work. But when you're at work, it's exactly the same type of health that you have when you're playing football. So it means at work, you also need to ensure that you remain safe, to work in a healthy manner, and then to ensure that you are doing it in exactly the same way you do for you or your kids. So it means for the interior, you spend a lot more time inside than you do outside. Absolutely correct. We spend hours a day. Some people, the other 8 hours we spend in bed, which means that most of your hours during the day are spent at work. So therefore, if you don't ensure that you are safe here at work, then it means you've got a significant problem. Particularly when it comes to dust, it's a significant problem.
Maybe for all those people who work in the office, we must convince them going to the production halls for a day or two, or making sure that they're convinced that they have the same working conditions as those working on the shop floors. Well, as a conclusion, I think this is a very serious risk, and we need a reform because the limits here in Germany are not acceptable, and this is to the detriment of those who work on these shop floors. They must accept a risk that can be eliminated, because in these times we must communicate the risk that dust represents. And this is not about whether or not dust is carcinogenic or not. It is. This is not about whether or not it is carcinogenic. The results of these studies are enough to change the legal limits that we have, and employers must make sure that their employees are protected against these risks. And that is why we're here today. We want to prompt governments and responsible people and companies. We want to raise awareness for them to do something about the health risk that wood dust poses. Thereby, they can protect their employees and their products. At Euromate, we offer several solutions for this problem. If you would like to contact us, we're on hall 13A47. Please approach us in order to get more details on our solutions. Do you have anything to add? You're welcome to do so. I would now be open to take any questions. Thank you very much for this very important and interesting discussion. Are there any questions? Questions here from the audience or online? That does not seem to be the case. So I would like to thank all of you. Thank you from our side too. We will soon continue at 3 o'clock with our last panel. I'm looking forward to welcoming you here once again, and enjoy your time until then. Thank you.